Matt, you can go. All right, and Chief Sanders, we are ready to go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Sanders. Today is March 1, 2024. The time is 1:31 p.m. And at this time, we are convening a joint session of the executive and legislative committees of the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission. Is someone available to take roll, please?
Yeah. Chairman.
Chief David Sanders,
Present.
Director David Byers,
Leanna Garcia is proxy for Dave Byers, present via Zoom or Google.
all right, Sheriff Chris Nanos,
Buddy James on behalf of Sheriff Chris Nanos.
Gene Bishop,
I am here. Thank you.
Chief Carol Riley,
Curtis Hicks on behalf of Chief Riley.
Steve Stahl,
Present by phone.
Rachel Mitchell, Colonel Jeff Glover,
Ryan Boyd on behalf of Colonel Glover.
all right. Chief Sanders, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting on February 9, 2024. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Dean Bishop, motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Gene. Is there a second?
Steve Dahl, second.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion or comment before the vote? Hearing none. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed, vote nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Molly, you've got item number 3.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Today we are in our 54th day of the legislative session with a total of 1,629 bills introduced. Of those bills, we are tracking 156 of them. With everything kind of in this part of the session, we're past crossover week, and now we look for strike language and other wonky things that can happen at the Capitol, which I've got a couple of my fellow lobbyists that we love to commiserate about all the fun that starts to happen at the Capitol this time of year. So I'm going to go ahead and start with an update on Senate Bill 1117. This is our data collection bill. We had the bill heard in Senate MAPS, and it did pass through, and I appreciate those that have signed in and support or neutral for the bill. We did have an amendment crafted for the bill, but ultimately what we ended up with was an amendment that stripped out the appropriation. I've had a lot of questions about that, whether ACJC would be able to fund the data system if it was to get up without an appropriation. And we have been able and are working on identifying grants funding that could be utilized to at least start with state agencies and getting the system built. We did have meetings and have been continuing to have meetings with law enforcement and sheriffs to understand their concerns as well. And Andy and I are going to be working on an amendment that we are hopeful we can add on that will meet the needs of some of the stakeholders that have expressed some concern. At this point, the bill has passed out of in both caucuses. We're waiting for it to get scheduled on the floor. We're hopeful that will happen next week. And that's really the update on Senate Bill 1117. Director Lefevre, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that before I move on.
No, Molly, thanks for that. And Mr. Chairman and members, just at this point, we're just working with the groups to try and keep it moving through the process as we try and address those concerns. So I think we had some good meetings the last couple of days, and we're getting pretty close to that happening. So we'll keep everybody apprised as we continue that conversation.
Any other questions from the members on the call? Okay, so the membership bill, which has had quite a lot of fun, I don't even know if that's the best way to say it. 2716 was heard in House Government. But while in committee, they voted to remove the tribal chief of police and or the tribal victims advocate. That was the only way that the bill was going to be able to move forward through the committee. I believe Representative Peshlikai did express concerns. She didn't understand why the House Government Committee voted to remove a tribal member, and that has been the point of contention. However, Representative Travers has done a bang-up job getting the votes, and the bill did pass third read yesterday, which was good. We just had about there was concern about tribal member being removed, but for the most part, the bill passed out of off the floor yesterday, which was good. I don't know if there will be continued discussions about it. And we will, as an agency, continue to work with tribal members in our discussions, especially when it comes to victims' compensation and assistance, just because they are as well impacted. Whether they're on the commission or not, we will continue to have those relationships with the tribes, even though they're right now currently not in the bill. But we do have a public defender and a victims advocate in the bill. Are there any questions or concerns anyone wants to raise about that before I move on? Hearing none. Okay, House Bill 2243, which is the fingerprint criminal history bill. DPS has been working very effectively on that bill. We were asked to sign in and support. It passed out of the House and is scheduled to be heard in Senate maps on 3/6. Ryan, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that, or that's it. Just letting us know it's moving through the process and you're doing a great job of keeping it moving.
We appreciate the support from this group. We just ask that if anyone hears any interesting questions to send them our way. There's been just people that you see a lot of language and they aptly want to know what it does. So we're answering those questions, but thank you all for the support.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Now, a bill that this bill with it's House Bill 2782, basically drug-free zone bill that Matt Gretz is running right now. This was not on our radar until yesterday when there was a floor amendment placed on it on an ad cow appropriating $500,000 to the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission to, I guess it's from the Housing Trust Fund, to create, I don't know if it's an annual report, trying to find that out, or if it's a one-time report, but it's to track, I guess, things that have to do with individuals that might be prosecuted for homeless drug charges. Still trying to get some information more on this bill just to kind of understand it. But this just came up yesterday and we're following it closely right now.
Well, if I might,
Go ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman and members, it just says for data collection. So I'm sure there's going to be a requirement to produce something, but that to me just screams SMOTS funding. So we'll keep our eyes on that.
See Ryan shaking his head too. But we, again, we always appreciate when representatives and senators want to throw money our way. So anyway, so with that concludes item number 3.
You have a question, Molly?
Hold on, there's a question. Yes.
I was just wondering if anyone collects the data that they are asking you to provide.
Mr. Chairman and Ms. Garcia, I don't know if we really digested this enough to understand what they want.
Mr. Chairman and Liana, I reached out to Representative Grass to get some clarification on it, just because it is a little vague. And yes, this was something that just came up on the floor yesterday. So there's a whole bunch of questions I have right now.
I hear you. I have a bill like that myself.
It's the time of year. All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn the presentation back to you for Liana Garcia to do her presentation.
Thank you, Molly. Item 4 on the agenda is a presentation on Senate Bill 1591. Liana, you want to take over?
Yes, I would love to. All right, I just wanted to share this bill with you because similar to what happened to Molly and Andy, we had a senator include the courts in one of her bills to administer a fund that doesn't exist yet. And I think there might be a better fit in the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. Basically, what Senate Bill 1591 does is it tacks on to criminal damage statute, which is ARS 13-1602, and says that anyone convicted of a violation of criminal damage has to pay an additional $100 fine to go into a fund, and the fund shall be administered by the Administrative Office of the Courts, and it will be to distribute monies from the fund to a retail business that is the victim of criminal damage, where it is determined that the victim is in need of funds and is not likely to receive restitution for the damage that occurred to the business. My thoughts are that, if you can find someone $100, normally the judge would also order restitution for any property damage that the business incurs, and restitution is first order of payment and priorities when someone is convicted. It comes before fines, fees, surcharges, assessments, that kind of thing. And my second thought is that the Crime Victims Compensation Fund already exists, and I'm wondering if those of you who are involved in the field can think of any hurdles to just having the money go into the Crime Victims Compensation Fund, or any reasons why that wouldn't work for this situation. So I wanted to put it on the agenda and get some discussion from the members.
Leon, I'll have to sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is Andy. Forget my protocol when I sit in my office and not in the conference. I will have to double check and make sure. I think the compensation and assistance fund is primarily set up for individuals, not businesses. And the kinds of costs that can be paid for out of compensation and assistance fund are pretty much regulated under rule. Does not mean that we couldn't operate it if that's the desire, so that the courts don't want to operate the program in the fund. But I would just guess on the surface, it would be easier to have a separate program than try and make it fit under the compensation and assistance fund, just given the nature of the rules and the structure of who's eligible and how those payments work.
Gotcha. Yep. And I figured there might be something like that if the Crime Victims Compensation Fund is more focused on individuals. I did read up a little bit on it, but I didn't find anything prohibiting businesses from applying for funds. But I did see that most of the expenses that it covers are things like healthcare and traumatic event counseling, that kind of thing.
Correct. I mean, we would, what we could pay, and I don't know, that doesn't mean that you couldn't expand what could be paid out of the compensation fund, but the kinds of things that they're probably talking about, which is, payments to the business to restructure, to bring their business back online or whatever, typically would not be covered under the compensation and assistance.
Gotcha. Thank you, Andy.
This is Steve Stahl. Just a question maybe for Andy and to present to the group is, since this money is mostly controlled by the county attorney, wouldn't it be the county attorney that would make up those rules or make the guidelines so that it would be applicable to this category?
Mr. Chairman and Stahl, the program is a state program and governed by state rules that the counties follow. So it would, putting it under the competent assistance program, it would have to fit under the existing rules, or, I mean, we're going through rules revisions, but I think it would get overly complicated and messy to try and fit it under the competent assistance program, given the fact that we get federal reimbursements for certain expenses and whatnot. Again, could it be managed? Sure. I mean, we could certainly manage a program if that would be a desire of the legislature and folks that says this might be the appropriate place to put the program and create a program. I would hesitate to try and, I would hesitate to try and shoehorn it in at this point.
Yeah. No,
Gotcha.
the way you explain it makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's feedback.
I would think it might complicate the collection of restitution from somebody on probation. If the probationer knew there was a separate fund that could pay restitution, why should they pay it? And if they could pay some of it, but not all of it, how do we know what portion they're going to pay? The average probation term is 3 years, but it can be extended up to 5 additional years if restitution is still owing at the end of 3. So we've got 8 years to collect restitution or more, depending on how long the original probation was.
Mr.
I don't
Chair,
know. It just seems to me that maybe trying to find a solution for a problem that may not exist.
Yeah, that's what I suspect too, because I suspect that a lot of these losses are probably covered by insurance policies.
Yeah, and that would be the other thing, that under the comp program, it has to be the payer of last resort. So somebody's going to have, and well, now you're talking about a whole different kind of, working with insurance companies and what the comp program does. Mr. Chairman, if I might, just a general comment. We've been getting requests from the victims field for a couple of years now about, can we try and, as a state, to figure out a better way of tracking restitution? And so your comment, I think, is an apt one. Of at some point, I think we have to, maybe as a commission, have some conversations with folks about, is there a better way that we can be tracking, restitution ordered, paid, collected, and what's out there, so that folks have a better understanding of what it is. Again, understand that somebody's ordered $1 million and is never going to pay $1 million, and that's kind of a figure that is what it is. But it's very difficult, I think, right now for folks to understand if somebody was, has a crime committed and is ordered to pay, $1,000 in restitution, where they actually stand in that process. So I throw that out there, maybe Chief Stahl for the victims committee, that maybe we want to try and figure out a way. I don't know if we can accomplish that through SMOTS, or if that's a more specific conversation that we need to have with the courts and the clerk's offices about, is there some way we can track that better? Because we track now whether or not people are current on payment plans for victim compensation, and we have to be careful with that, because they may have made a payment on Monday, we're checking on Tuesday, it hasn't made its way through the system, and so again, there's some inherent inefficiencies in the system, but it is something we get asked quite a bit from the victims community, and we try and figure out a way to do that.
Well, each clerk of court in each county is responsible for collecting restitution. We get a monthly report from the clerk's office that shows who paid how much and what the balance is owing. So I think it's accurately tracked at the local level, but I don't think there's any statewide, unless it comes out through some AOC report, which I may not be aware of.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Andy, I know the AOC tracks the amount of restitution that's received, that's collected. I don't know that they compare it, though, that we have any comparative metric versus how much was ordered. especially considering that I think we just started tracking this data. I don't know how long ago, but a lot of restitution continues being collected over a period of several years, sometimes decades. And so you'd have to go back and look at old court orders to see how much was ordered to compare it. But I think we are getting closer to having the ability to track both of those things. And I know our statistics department is ramping up sort of how much detail they collect and track, and we're generally trying to collect more data in preparation for getting your SCMODs online.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And that's the other thing about the victim comp program that would be interesting in your discussion, Leon, is, those claims can go on for years.
Yeah.
With under a total dollar amount versus, I think, the kind of payments that you're talking about out of this fund would be more one-time kind of payments, or much more time-bound. And, how do you rebuild something, fix something?
Yeah.
The devil's in the detail on this bill, I think. If I'm due $1 million in restitution and you're due $100, do I get my $1 million before you get your 100, or the other way around? Or do I get $1,000 and you get a penny? It's going to be difficult to administer. I would think.
Agree. Well, we'll keep working with the sponsor on it to see if we can come up with a solution to what she wants to do.
Yeah, essentially restitution orders are mandatory. So
Right.
this is really letting the person responsible for the damage off the hook.
But I did hear Andy volunteer to administer the fund, though.
Well, that solves that problem.
Well, and the devil's in those details too. Like, what am I going to get to administer that?
Exactly.
Well, thank you for that presentation. Does that wrap it up, Leanna?
Yep. I just wanted to have a quick discussion with all of you to see if you had any good input and feedback. And as always, you provided.
Okay, thanks for your input as well. Item 5 on the agenda puts it back to Molly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the time of the agenda where we go through just kind of a lightning round of bills. You did receive a list of the tracked bills that we are currently keeping on top of. And as I said, we're keeping an close eye on anything that would be striker language at this point. There's one bill, there's a couple of bills I'm going to go through, but let's start with House Bill 2743. This bill is of particular concern to ACJT because it takes $400,000 from Arizona's or ACJT's Victims Compensation and Assistance Fund and redirects it to an address confidentiality program fund. We're already running into issues with our victims and compensation assistance funding being depleted. And so this is just another kick in the you-know-what to take more funds from our agency and redirect it to a different program. I'm not as familiar with whether this address confidentiality program is truly a problem or not, but I would turn it back over to you as members to maybe give some insights or input on that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Andy. This is a program run out of the Secretary of State's office. I think if you are a victim primarily of domestic violence and you're forced to move or you move, you can apply to this program. And in essence, they create a way for you to not have mail delivered to your address that you're moving to. It gets sent to a separate address. Therefore, it is designed to help protect your confidentiality. Again, a very worthwhile program. I tried to make that point when I got up in committee and spoke about, certainly that we support the purpose and intent of the program and whatnot. They're basically in the same spot we were several years ago, where they're seeing, their revenue sources and covering their costs, and what are they trying to do about it. I think they had gotten $250,000 in general fund last year from the legislature. And this budget time, the legislature is looking to replace that money with something else. and they see that we have a relatively attractive fund balance at the moment because of all of the one-time money that the legislature has provided to us. So I tried to make that point, and the legislature, being the short-sighted one-year beast that it is, just was not looking to spend any general fund revenue. So we're putting together some talking points, for trying to have some conversations with the Secretary of State's office about, is there another way that we can be helpful here to try and help them find money. I believe their fund source is a $50 assessment on certain types of crimes that deal with stalking and domestic violence and things like that. So, yeah, I did, at the end of the day, this one-time money that the legislature has given us has been a great boon to the program, and it's really trying to help us set us up for a larger program size over a period of time because of our fund balance. And if they start stealing our fund balance, it just makes it harder for us to do that for victims. So we'll keep you informed as those conversations going on. I haven't gone and done my best Godfather impersonation with them yet to see if I can come to an agreement that they'll appreciate, but we'll do that here shortly.
Okay. Any other discussion on that bill?
This is Steve Stahl, Mr. Chair and Director. I think you bring up very valid points, and you brought up a very valid point in the prior discussion where this money is a one-time fund, but victim compensation can be drawn out over a number of years. And if they take money from the one-time fund, then a victim may not be compensated for what they need to be compensated for, or what was agreed to be compensated for years prior. So I think they're trying to fix one problem by stealing from the one that actually has a valid reason to have a fund balance. The county attorneys and the state has agreed that this is an extremely valid process and needs to be funded as such. I just, having been a chief and having gone through victim advocates and things like that do this address confidentiality, I'm not certain that it's used as much as they want to indicate that it is, or maybe they're thinking about expanding it. I don't know, but I'm finding it hard to understand how they need this kind of money as few times as it was used.
Mr. Chairman and Chief Stahl, again, I don't know the inner workings. It's probably a very, I think, staff-driven process. It's pays for staff people. I don't necessarily know. It's not, I don't have a good answer because I don't really know that program well enough to comment on how it's used or how much it's used. It's victims. We've been told that the governor's office is not supportive of the money being transferred out, but I don't know when it falls down to getting maybe into a budget discussion, which is where it probably would end up at this point, how that falls on a priority list. So I have some thoughts and solutions that are shorter term that they may or may not like that I need to have a conversation with them about. So we'll see if we can move that out. I'd prefer not to have it in any bill or language anywhere, because legislative inertia being what it is, if it's in once, it'll be in again, and then it just gets harder to remove it.
Mr. Chairman, Liana has her hand up.
Yeah, Liana, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to let folks know that the address confidentiality program covers not only victims of domestic violence and stuff, but all of the folks that are protected in statute. For example, like prosecutors, former prosecutors, judges, there's a large category of folks, and last year legislators added themselves to that category. So basically anyone that's in that category that's entitled to statutory protection of their public records has to go to a judge, and there's a petition process to petition. They have to show that they are, in reasonable fear of up their safety in order to have their address protected. But a lot of new categories of folks have been added in the last 4 or 5 years. So I bet that's why it's getting a lot bigger.
Okay.
Now I see it's self-interest.
Yeah.
And
Right.
while those are valid arguments, absolutely valid arguments, I would argue against taking from the victim compensation to fund that. That should be, if they are indeed having that problem, as the director said, that probably needs to be funded a different way.
Mr. Chairman, Chief Dahl, I would agree with you on that. Okay, any other discussion on this bill?
Well, the only thing I would add is it seems appropriate to waive any application fee for a victim, but for a legislator or a prosecutor, judge, or a chief probation officer, I would think an application fee might offset some of the costs.
All right. Any other discussion? Thank you all for your discussion on that particular topic. Just a couple other bills that I'd like to just keep your eyes on. Senate Bill 1003, which is the prohibition of photo enforcement. Again, this bill is moving. It's a Wendy Rogers bill. It's probably not going to be signed by the governor, but I wanted to just let you know that it is in fact moving. It's a bill that gets introduced every year and probably will not get it past the governor's office, probably may not sign it, but stranger things have happened. Just letting you know that one is in fact moving. It's the prohibition on photo enforcement. Carbone's bill, which is House Bill 2593, that's the public records bill. You know, it's passed Cal yesterday and is moving. Again, this is the bill that deals with public records requests and finding agencies if they do not come into compliance in a certain amount of time. However, I understand amendments have been made to basically clarify that if you do your due diligence and do a good enough job communicating with the person who is making the public records request, that a fine will not be imposed. I've had conversations with Carbone who feels like, you know, he's not going to give this up. He still wants to keep pursuing it. I don't know if the governor will sign it, but it is in fact moving. Wanted to give you a heads up on that one. There's also the aggravated unlawful flight bill. And House Bill 2134 is moving. It received a due pass in Cal. This is one that I know law enforcement cares a lot about. And then finally, just House Bill 2245, it's the fentanyl narcotics bill. It deals with defining the sale or contemplation of sale of fentanyl. They did have an amendment that moved from what would be considered $1,000 now to 200,000 grams. So I think that clarifying language, I think, helps ease some concerns of some people that were concerned about the actual definition of dealing with that. I don't know if there's any other bills, Ryan, Leon, or anyone else on the call that they want to discuss or have concerns about. No, none, Ryan?
Nope, all good. Well, not all good, but none for today.
Enough for today. Are there any other bills based on the tracking sheet anyone's had a chance to scan that might have concerns about? If not, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my legislative speed dating report.
Appreciate it. Great job.
Yes.
Item 6 on the agenda is a call to the public. Have any members of the public announce they want to address us today?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at my email and I have not received any requests.
Thank you. Item or the next item is our next meeting. Should we plan on a week from today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Molly. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, let me thank you all for dialing in today. I really appreciate it. And on my motion, we'll be adjourned. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You too, and members.
Thank you, everybody.